welcome back, my dear Bulas and Beras. It is that time once again, as we have plenty to talk about today. We have big earnings coming up in traditional markets. I want to follow up on the analysis on all of the major bourses across the world, as we did hit our targets both to the downside, and now we're coming back into the fun part of the week, realistically. Anyways, more importantly, on top of that, or maybe just as important, got to talk about some cryptocurrencies as well as euro dollar, as well as gold, as well as big focus on Ethereum, because that is actually the one that is presenting a rather interesting case as of right now. So I want to follow up on all of those. And as always, I would like to wish you the best of the best and the happiest of the happiest, because why the fuck not, man? It's a nice little Wednesday, or is it a Wednesday? Yeah, it's a nice hump day. It's beef day for me. And so let's get to the actual Crown Trading app right here, which can be found at app.crowntrading.net. We do have something new to look at that we have not seen in the past few months, and that is the open interest crawling up about 200 million from yesterday to today. Maybe not those exact numbers, but I do believe that we got up a little bit north of 2.3 billion at some point on that move up to 9450-ish 9400-ish region yesterday. So that's going to be a focus today. Fear and Greed Index also ticking up quite a few points as well to a 50 read, quite literally neutral as neutral gets, and Bitcoin dominance actually exactly the same at 62.25% about. So it is suggestive that we are really going to see a major, massive decision being made, which is going to lead into a pretty phenomenal trend. So I'm going to be matching up actually the open interest plus a couple new tools that'll be presented today as well, assuming that we have enough time. Anyways, let's jump into the actual price action analysis right here. And I want to start off with Mr. Buterin, and the reason being because Mr. Buterin is presenting the most interesting case as it is right now, consolidating at a high level. What looks to be, do you want to call it a flag formation? Do you want to call it some sort of a cup and handle? Do you want to call it some sort of a, well, I don't think that you could call it a triangle, but at the end of the day, there is plenty of things going on right here, which is suggestive that we are going to see it at least try to break the long-term trend. Hey, get on over there. Sorry, this chart for whatever reason is not acting in the way that I want. There we go. I think I made this on probably log scale, and now I'm using linear scale, but I do believe that they're both going to give us more or less the same regions, as I really want to focus down on this guy right here, the area that we've been kind of selling off of for the last couple of months. But as it is right now, the golden cross on the 3-day is going to be coming, assuming that it will inevitably be coming as long as we're closing, especially above 234.5. It looks like that is your last little higher low right here in this formation, and that would produce a nice little bullish bias from this time frame's perspective, as momentum also is getting ready to turn back up again, and historical volatility percentile being rather low would suggest that this next trending move probably does have some massive firepower behind it, meaning that if we do break above this region, especially on this next 3-day total closure, which by the way conveniently happens tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern time, and that would be a price point of about 248.5, 249 region, then I would very likely be looking for another move back up into this blue box territory over here in the upper 200s, somewhere between about 275 and 290-ish region. Would look about right. And then realistically looking at the combination of both historical volatility percentile plus momentum oscillators on the 3-day would suggest that we probably do see maybe a quick consolidation there, but likely another try higher, as we are going to whatever the breakage from this region is going to mark the next major trend. Now, of course, this can work just as easily to the downside, albeit right now it does have a little bit of a more upside bias here. However, any sort of a move back down below the low of this range, which would be about 225 especially, but even destroying the 233 low right here, would flip it back down around and very likely initiate a move to the low side of the overall consolidation here, which would be somewhere in the low 200s. And then we'll come back to that and kind of reanalyze. But I wanted to start off with this one. We'll come back to cryptos a little bit later. Now I want to talk about euro dollar, because it's right here. We are seeing that 115.5 target being met in the early morning hours. Other than that, I don't, do I think that we get a pullback here? Maybe a short-term pullback, yes. It's anywhere between, let me mark this one off, anywhere between this area. Let's get a nice little boxy box in there. Let's see, something like this would be about right. There we go. And I think that we're just getting into it right now. So maybe a short-term pullback from this region, but overall, I do think that this one will reach higher on a weekly schedule. So, does it pull back down to like 115 even, or maybe even as far as the upper 114s? Possible, yes, but overall the direction is up, and I still do think that long-term, granted the breakout that was confirmed last week Probably do see a run up towards the 117, 118 region. Sorry, this is actually more close to the 118 region right here, at which point I'll probably be looking for more of a medium term to long term pullback, and then we'll come back to it after that. Also want to follow up on gold as well. We did hit our 1850 targetish region. Actually, we're there right now. Actually exceeded it by a little bit. This one does have a little bit more on it. Maybe has another drive up to 1880ish region, but I would be cautious of it now. Been bullish on this one for quite some time, ever since especially 1400 was broken months and months ago. But realistically, I do think that it's going to enter into a little bit of a short-term and medium-term pullback after that area is met. So it's kind of like it's a little bit too hot for me right now to really put too much of a focus on it. I feel like we'll probably refrain from talking about it for a little bit after this next sort of segment is hit. But for right now, I'd be keeping my eyes on this blue box right here, technically between about 1870 and 1885. So as long as we're living below there, I do believe that we're going to play out like a short-term and medium-term consolidation between where we are right now and all the way down to low 1800s, like 1820ish region. But overall, I still am actually quite bullish on this long term. Let's just see. Yeah, the monthly is going to have a chance to close on a higher high, so that would very likely initiate a run towards a prior all-time high at just under 2000 and perhaps even beyond there. But we'll get to that bridge when we cross it. And for right now, looking at, just to kind of summarize my thoughts up right there, maybe another stab back up into that blue box territory, but overall, short-term, medium-term, I'll be looking for consolidation sideways and downwards. With likely a try towards new all-time highs coming into the next couple months, that being August and September. And we're actually not so far away from the end of July, by the way. So it is very much relevant to be looking at the monthly right now, because we have about one more trading week left. I think one more trading week left. Let me check in right here. After this week, we have one more week left in the month of July for trading. Anyways, moving on, let's go check out NASDAQ futures, of which I want to follow up on this one as well. We did hit our downside target from yesterday, coming in right around, I believe I said 10,800, and we got down to, maybe I said 10,850 or 10,800, whatever it was one of those two. We got a little bit further down than that at just below 10,800ish region, and I do believe that we are going to come back down a little bit more today as well. However, I would wait for confirmation on this one with any sort of a move below yesterday's low at 10,784, spot 75, and that will very likely initiate a move officially back down here towards a low 10,700ish region, somewhere around the 10 simple. While I do think that we get a short-term bounce around there, which I'll actually put in a nice little liquid zone to mark off that area. Something like this would be about right. While I do think that we get a short-term bounce off this region, overall, probably later on, after a few more earnings are printed, I'd be looking for a move extended all the way back down to the 272 fib extension here, which should be in line with the daily 21 as well. Now, that does not necessarily make it bearish overall, but breaking below there would actually really start to look like a massive reversal in place. For right now, I'm just calling short and medium-term time frame reversals. My criteria to be met for a long-term reversal is still the same based off the weekly low last week. If that condition is met, 10,350, just even ticking below, we will initiate regular bearish divergence going all the way back from early January of this year, February as well. January and February highs right here, and then again right here. 3 drives typically does do the trick, especially when momentum oscillators are a little bit frothy there as well. But for right now, that's obviously well and far away. I just think that short term, very likely coming back down about 10,700ish region. I'd be looking for a short term bounce there intraday, with likely potential to extend all the way down to the 21, maybe later this week or early next week, and set this one up for an interesting monthly close, which I don't feel comfortable calling right now. But not that I call anything. There's no calls to be fucking made. I always laugh when someone says, "What's your call, Crown?" or "You made a good call, Crown," or "You made a terrible call, Crown. Your call sucks." Like I don't make calls. I don't do the spoons, bros. The good old spoon boys beware. there. This is gonna be a nasty one. But daily bearish divergence also present as well, going 1, 2, 3 drives in the making. That goes all the way back to this high right here, this high right here, and this high right here, respectively. And that's also where I'm getting that target down to about 10,500-ish region, of which I look for a medium-term time frame bounce off there, and then we'll come back and see if this one does line up for an actual weekly reversal. At which point we can target moves very likely back down, at the very least to the 10 simple, which is all the way at about 10,100-ish region. But and while I do think that we get a little bit of a bounce there, very likely it would extend all the way down to the 96, 9,700-ish region, more long term. But again, when we're looking at a weekly, you have to adopt a weekly schedule. So is that happening today? Nope, it's not happening today. Is it happening tomorrow? Nope, also not tomorrow. Is it happening next week? Probably not next week either. but maybe like in the next month, when we get the next monthly, then we could have something to talk about there as well. But for right now, it's it's all in place, and I don't really see any reason to be super bullish on this one, especially as long as we're below 10,950. My ear is itching. What the fuck? What could even be causing that? Who knows? Anyways, have the same sort of divergence plays present here on the 4 hour. Not that I don't really care about 4 hour charts on traditional markets to begin with, but overall, things kind of gearing towards that resolution. So essentially what I'm saying is that as long as we're below 10,950, I'm looking for those levels to be tested over the next week or two, respectively. Whether we're talking about a short term and medium term, obviously, the longer ones are going to take a little bit longer probably to hit. However, if 10,950 does get taken out to the upside on especially a daily closure, let me just 1050 on a daily closure, then I would be looking for this run to extend. This consolidation probably brings us up another $500 to 11,500 before the next pullback. But I don't think that's what's going on right here. If that's what was going on right here, I would have expected to see some sort of hidden bullish divergence on this last drive to the downside, and we actually don't see that. So I do think that this run is getting a little bit frothy, and seen as what's it called, earnings for all the major stocks is pretty much this week. We probably do see, if there is going to be a reversal, or if there's going to be a major change of behavior, very likely does get catalyzed by all of that. So let's go look at some of the individual names which have been driving the stock, especially with regards to Tesla. Tesla coming down to our levels from yesterday, right around 1550. I believe it was, selling off right off the open. I don't believe I said anything about that, but I am essentially just looking for the range to play out a little bit more between our lows of about 1475 and essentially where we are right now. And looking at the daily, it does look, it does look like we want to play that out. Overall, I do think that we are going to get a move back down to like 1350-ish region. But is that going to happen right now? Probably not, and I wouldn't really look for that to be triggered off until we take out, at the very least, basically the low of last week. Let me just double check on this one. Yeah, 1430-ish region. Anywhere below 1430-ish region, we will initiate bearish divergence on the weekly as well, and I'd be looking for a quick move, the following week, probably down to the 1200 gap right here. Small bounce, and then likely extension to wherever the 10 simple is at that time, which actually might be in line with that gap coming into next week. So, do I think that we're still playing out a reversal here? Likely, yes. I just do not understand what the obsession is with cryptocurrency people and shit like Tesla. It seems like everyone and their mother in cryptocurrency land is also a Tesla fanboy too, and that's great. I'm a fan of Elon Musk. Am I a fan of Tesla stock? No, I'm not a fan of a chart that looks like this. I mean, if you were around in 2017 for Bitcoin, this probably looks rather familiar, doesn't it? And I'd still be saying that. I'd still be saying that. The only thing that I'd say that is maybe suggesting that we don't have a top in is the fact that historical volatility percentile is it didn't really heat up all that much on the actual high. I would have expected a major outlier there, but we could also be using a little bit too high of an annual vol there. Put it down to 100 and see what it prints. Actually, much lower, in fact, which is very interesting. So perhaps I am wrong. That is usually a very powerful indication of where we are in the overall market cycle. For example, the last time that we saw red being printed over here, that was your next major high before a massive meltdown all the way from Jesus Christ, man, 969 to 360 just a few weeks later, 60 62.83% meltdown right there. No, it's just a pullback, bro. Just for buying, right? Well, of course it was. I mean, later on it did make massively new all-time highs, but I do believe that we're in the process of very likely playing out at the very least a medium-term pullback here, if you want to call it that, and then we'll come back and reanalyze it. And I imagine it's going to go with the rest of the market. It was a big player these past few months. I'd look for it to maybe take a little bit more of a backseat in the coming rotation. Speaking of rotations, let's go check out Microsoft. How is he doing? Same sort of chart going on right here. We do have that same potential bearish divergence present on the weekly. Not confirmed just yet though, until we take out last week's low at 201.39. Initiated a rather quick move, probably down to 196 region, probably a small bounce there with potential to continue all the way down to the upper 180s is where I'll be looking for, and then we'll come back and analyze it. I don't think it'd be appropriate to call like a mark cycle top here or anything like that just yet, but I do think that it'd be appropriate to make the same sort of indication as Tesla essentially. Looking at the daily right here, what do we see? A lot of interesting things as well. It does look like short term we probably make another move back down to the 21 exponential moving average at 204.75 region. But I would be looking for a bounce there. It's really not until we take out last week's low where I can target that move much lower into the mid 190s essentially, and perhaps beyond. But for right now, short term, yes, a little bit more down, but I would be looking for a bounce off this region, and we'll probably get resolution. Well, actually, I probably shouldn't say anything on that. Apple, another one that's hitting our downside target right around 390-ish region, but the same thing for this one. That was only short term. I'm still looking at last week's low as a nice pivot for initiated move back down to about 350-ish region, with likely a bounce short term and medium term there as well. With historical volatility percentile this low on a weekly, it does suggest that we potentially could be in the process of marking a new trend, and if this does put in a reversal here alongside bearish divergence present on a weekly, I would be very skeptical of that being I wouldn't be skeptical of it. I would be looking at this to emerge to the downside overall. Bounces along the way, like I said, about 350, but ultimately I'd at the very least be targeting somewhere around 330, 335 region-ish. What else do we have to look at? NAS futures. NAS futures also hitting our downside target yesterday from, I believe I said 10,800. No, we already covered this one. Yeah, we already covered this one. I'd be looking, like I said, I'd be looking for extension short term to 10,700-ish region, probably short term bounce there, and then likely we do see 10,500, 10,550-ish region tested, but that's where the next sort of weekly pivot can be had, I believe. Actually, no, a little bit lower than that. Last week's low was 10,350, so there's probably a quicker way to kind of judge that one as a breakdown. Is there? Hourly close below the bottom side liquid zone would probably do it. I don't even have it marked off, do I? Somewhere down around here, yeah, 10,550-ish region probably does do it, but I do think it's appropriate to wait for the higher term timeframes just because we are at potentially a major pivot in the market. Looking at Japan, I want to check on what they're doing. Losing its luster a little bit, still riding the uptrend. Of course, it does make it it does make it difficult to get overall bearish on, but I do think that it is setting up for another move back down to 22,500-ish region. And this is very much in line with what we see on E-mini futures for SPY, which is a little bit concerning right here. Now, is this a confirmed fake out just yet? Is this a confirmed swing failure pattern just yet? No, it's not. Not until we close the daily total below 323 region. But I do believe that. It's a little bit in question here, as I'm sure that a lot of people, and myself included, I would have taken this trade as well. You kind of have to. Got long off of the breakage of this pattern right here to the upside 323 region. Again, the signal for that initiating move back up to fill the gap somewhere around like 335 region. Back up here, but with the way that the rest of the market's looking, it is a little bit it is a little bit in question. I mean, obviously from a major moving average perspective, this one is bullish as well. I'm supposed to be bullish off something that looks like this, but just looking at the general markets, it becomes a little bit more visually apparent that we're seeing rotations right now. We saw NASDAQ go first and all the techs go first. Yes, no shit, because that's basically what's going to save the world if you want to save the world. I suppose, or at least it's the hot thing right now. And then now we're kind of seeing it flow into the rest of the market. But is the rest of the market strong enough to keep up? Probably the health sector would be next if I had to guess. And then, I don't know, maybe financials after that. But, looking at this right here, it does bring into question the efficacy of this current move. And while I wouldn't say that it's over just yet, it's very much in question. So I'd keep an eye on this, 323 region. Yeah, 323 region. As long as you're above it, I'd still respect it, but it does look like, it does look like it's going to have a chance to break it back down below today. I'm also curious do we have anything else to look at here? I think that's it for now. Did we cover Eurodollar? Yes, we did. Did we cover Tesla? Yes, we got all these. What about triple Qs? Triple Qs also very interesting here too. Triple Qs looks like, it looks very similar to NAS in some ways. Same sort of bearish divergence present on the daily. It's technically not confirmed just yet, but taking out yesterday's low at 263.13 very likely does initiate that next move back down to not just this side of the range, but this guy right here at about 258 and a quarter. Again, that doesn't necessarily confirm a full-on weekly reversal. Weekly reversal gets confirmed, at least in my opinion, below last week's low at 252 and 3/4, initiating to move back down to 246 and a half, and then likely continuation after a small bounce to the mid 230s region. But again, all these things are looking in some way kind of a variation of each other, right? So this is why it's very important to look at all the different, all the different indices and all the major sectors within the market, because you are going to get some sort of general consensus on what the general direction is. And it seems to me that NASDAQ is mostly held up just by a few different stocks. I think the FANGs, and maybe not even the FANGs, but like Microsoft, Apple, and I think it's Google are, and Tesla maybe too, or sorry, not Tesla, but the major 3 or 4 are doing most of the heavy lifting, while the rest of them are kind of not all that impressive. It does really call into question the overall strength that we're seeing in the market. And while this can hang out a little bit more, I would say that can this reaccumulate at 257? It can, yes. I mean, it still would have the rising bottoms around there. That's why I say this, this is kind of my signal for that, or bad terminology there, but that would be my trigger for that move and kind of bias change to the downside. It's looking like it's potential here. Anyways, let's go check out Mr. Bitcoin and see what he's doing. Mr. Cohn, how are you today? And pretty interesting day yesterday. So a couple things of note. Obviously, we're grinding up the same area that we've been speaking about for a while now. 94.50-ish region is the area in question. Technically speaking, do we have higher highs printed just yet? No, we do not. But it's going to have its potential, and it's going to have a chance today. And the strength in Mr. Buterol does make me consider that if Buterol pulls through, which Buterol is looking a little bit more, relatively healthy, and relatively looks like it wants to give a try to the upside. Will that help Bitcoin's case? Yes, I do think so. However, still, I'll be looking at this area as the next trigger for a bias change. And it doesn't just change the bias for the short terms, but it also does the medium term, and very likely flows into the long term as well, because we're probably going to see Mr. Buterol, if this does confirm above this level, follow through as well. So this level being the same level that we've been speaking about at 94.50-ish region. On a daily closure, I would just say that that's, doesn't really help all that much, but 94.25 region. So either a closure above 94.25 or even just a wick above whatever the high of 7th of July was, which on GDAX was 94.75 even, would very likely initiate a move back up here towards 9,700-ish region. I'm curious how this looks like on a volume profile perspective. I would imagine it probably has all the same areas essentially printed out, and what do you know, it does. Above 9,700, at 9,700, we see a little bit of interest from a volume profile perspective, which would suggest that we do see a short-term pullback from there. But then we have officially done something that we haven't done in a couple months now, almost since late May, and that would be put in a daily uptrend. We'd officially have a higher high right here. We'd have 1 and 2 higher lows right here. And some people might count this as 3. I would not. And while I'd be looking for a short-term pullback off that 9,700-ish tick, I don't really see any reason why it wouldn't test the overall top side of this region in this blue box territory, the same area that we've been had marked off for fucking ages now at 9,900 to 10,000. And quite literally, Bitcoin is in the middle of this overall range for the long term between 8,900 and 9,900 right here. So, it kind of doesn't really have much of a bias, I suppose. If you are looking at this just purely from a volume profile perspective, you do see that the point of control is actually right below price action right here. So it would give a little bit more of a bullish twist as well, as long as we remain above that, which is just below 9,300-ish region. So I would look for that to be a nice medium-term pivot as well. If Bitcoin starts to close daily deltas below that, I would look for another drive to the bottom side of the range at 9,000. But just as I've been saying for a long fucking time, which for whatever reason seems to get misheard, or maybe I just don't do a great job of explaining it, but just because I talk about downside targets or upside targets for that matter doesn't mean they're like destined to happen. There's always a trigger for that effect, and the same thing that I've been saying for a while still needs to be present, or still needs to be met, which is a daily closure below 9,000 or above 9,900. If one of those two things happens, yes, I'm looking for the next long-term trend to emerge from that. To the downside, very likely we see upper 7,000s, mid 7,000s, extremely likely I would say, and to the upside, we can talk about 11,000 and beyond, and that can obviously build on top of each other. Anyways, as it stands right here, daily momentum oscillators are pointed back up north, rejecting the bearish control zone, which is actually also very, very important here as well, because not only are we getting above these pivots from the short-term time frames, but we're also seeing actually higher-term time frames momentum follow through with it as well. Looking at the 12-hour, we do see that one's already been kind of leading it up ever since 16th of July. Area right here, and looks more or less fine. And we also do we see any hidden bearish divergence, potential hidden bearish divergence in play? It is not confirmed just yet. It will only be confirmed if and only if we put in a local high right here, marking off a lower high while RSI makes a higher high. If that does happen, which will be confirmed by they're not taking out the prior 12-hour low, but closing at the very least a 2-hour or 4-hour delta below 9,300. I do think that would get it as well. That would very likely catalyze a move back down to low side of the range at that $9,000 region, which is obviously going to give it a chance, a potential to break, initiate that breakdown once again. But does that in and of itself confirm it? No, it makes it more likely, of course, because anytime that you're grinding out the bottom side resolution of an area, it's going to be more likely to break to the downside. Fucking obviously, just like the same thing to the top side. But it doesn't do it in and of itself. Still need to see that condition met as far as my own trading behaviors go. And of course, it's not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, and everyone's free to trade whatever way that they deem fit for themselves. But I'm just kind of sharing my sort of view on the markets right here, which you may or may not find useful. Anyways, what else do we have to look at? Going down to the 4-hour, we do see 4-hour momentum getting waning a little bit here. I don't see any divergences to be aware of. Maybe technically hidden bearish divergence is in play here too, but that very likely initiates a move back down to 9,300. The reaction at 9,300 is going to be key to judging whether this is just yet again another lower high, or if we're actually in the process of flipping this around. But because the 3-day is closing today, I think that it's appropriate to put a lot of focus on this one as well, just like we did on Mr. Butyrol. And I think that the 3-day chart is just a lot more obvious here and a lot easier to read. First off, from a volume profile perspective, as we have it up, we are going to have a chance to close above the point of control here, which is essentially marking off all of the what would be considered accumulation if we do confirm above it today. At 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, it will have a chance. And not only that, but also just from a general trend perspective, if we take this off, taking out that same high that we were looking at from 7th of July at just below 9,500. It's going to be 9,450 to 9,475 region, depending upon which exchange rate you're looking at. Will not just mark this off from a volume profile perspective as accumulation, but it also again kind of flip around and confirm a higher low here as well. And well, if you got a higher low and your last few highs were higher highs, then I mean again, I think it's just a lot easier to read from this perspective. we very likely test back up towards what 9900ish region. Hidden bullish divergence also potentially present on 3-day RSI as well, and we would confirm above the exponential. So all these things working together: volume profile, RSI, divergences, trend as well, and from a major moving average perspective, well, I mean, kind of hard to be bearish off of something that's, you know, looking like this, I guess, especially if we close above that critical level. So all those things working together is essentially the picture that I'm painting. But same thing, just because I'm talking about this does not mean that we're destined to go to 9,900. The trigger needs to be met, and the trigger is taking out 7th of July's high. That would at least be mine. Or a daily closure above, what was it, 94.25, I think it was. Something like that would be about right. We'd also see 3-day Stokes point back up to the upside as well, so we can tack on another point of confluence there too. And this is all coming along the side of very, 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 very low reads and historical volatility percentile. So now I'm going to present a new tool straight from the lab of Mr. Bali and Pigs, which let me find it right here. And I need to I'm going to do my best to explain this, but there's no promises. I mean, this is something that you really need to take like a college course in statistics for, which I typically do talk shit about college, but if I can say one good thing about my college experience, it was my class in statistics. That was the one class that I actually do recall back and actually use years later. Pretty much nothing else in my college history did I actually bother using later. Even my econ courses, I mean, they're just not relevant. Economists are just notorious for being absolute dog shit at trading anyways. It's almost as if fundamentals matter. Anyways, looking at this right here. So what I want to talk about is entropy now. So if you're familiar with like chemistry and physics and I don't know, thermodynamics probably, you're probably familiar with the concept of entropy. And basically the way that we can kind of measure it and look at it in trading is that when you have, let me just make sure that I need to think about this, because this is stuff that I have to recall back from like fucking ages ago, man. Okay. All right. let me just meditate on this one for a second. But basically, the way that I understand entropy's relationship to historical volatility percentile, and then that relationship to a momentum oscillator, which you can pretty much use any of them, and it should help kind of round up this bias. But it would go something like this. Okay. All right. So when entropy, which is measured by this guy right here, and we actually have more of a corrective measure over here, but I'll just use the stock standard one right here. When entropy is going down and historical volatility percentile is going up, meaning that it's expanding, that's when you see major trends emerge. So right now you can see that entropy did mark a couple pairs of highs right here in 28th of May. That was the actual high at 10,200, and then is kind of like grinding out what would be a relatively high area as well. And this is standardized across all assets, by the way, so it is incredibly useful. And historical volatility percentile, which I'm actually looking at all-time HVP down here, which is, again, it's just standardized towards the history of what we're looking at. So, you could use a couple different tools for this. It's going to essentially give you the same sort of interpretation, which matters most. But this being this low means for a mean reverting indicator that it's likely to expand. I mean, that's just the way that it's designed. And when we're talking about percentiles, I mean, that's the likelihood of it. So what this is suggesting is that we are going to see a major massive trend emerge from here. That means that we can go down into our momentum oscillators like your Stokes, like your RSI, both of which have potential major bullish confluences here with the hidden bullish divergence present here, and also just flat out crossing the upside for our 3-day Stokes, which, by the way, I consider this a test of this trend line. Not super obvious, but it should be viewed as more of a regression, is what I found with Stokes. And then also, especially if Bitcoin does take out that 7th of July high, this is where I'm really getting that intuition, or maybe not intuition, but that bias. Yes, bias is the right word here. That Bitcoin would very likely not just test test the top side of the range, but it very likely break to the top side of the range alongside Mr. Butero breaking to the top side of the range. And, there's going to be areas of interest, in the mid 10,000 region at 10,500, at 11,000 and 11,500. But overall, this sort of a read typically does lead into major, massive trends in price action. By the same token, literally by the same token, and this is what I really have to be very clever in relating, because this sort of thing is where I think trading gets the most misunderstood. By the same fucking token, if Bitcoin does flip around the other way, all of that same sort of stuff would apply, but to the downside, and we'd very likely see a massive move to the downside. As I've been saying, mid 7,000s to upper 7,000s, extremely likely, and very with potential to continue much lower. But I wouldn't feel comfortable calling that or saying anything about that until we actually would hit that. Just like to the upside, I think 11,000 to 11,500 would be rather relevant, but like calling a move to 20,000 and beyond, I think that's just moon boy heresy as of right now. Anyways, okay, cool. So with the way that momentum oscillators are printed right now, though, it would give a bias to the upside here, especially from the 3-day, which is closing tonight. So as always, I put the most importance on the highest time frame that's closing the soonest. In this case right now, it would be the 3-day, and I think the 2-day might even be closing tonight as well. Yeah, it will be. But the 2-day is not as obvious, although, the 2 days following through as well. We're going to see 2-day Stokes very likely cross the upside, and that'll happen with any sort of a closure above. Hey, study not authenticated. What the fuck, man? Did Bali take me off this? Am I on the bad boys list? Let's see. What's going on here? Maybe I just need to reselect it. Let's see. Or maybe it's been taken off for forever and I'll never have it again. Let's see. Actually, it might be locked for me. I wonder what's going on there. Let's see. Will it print? Yeah, it's not going to print right now. All right, that's interesting. All right. God damn it. I'm flying blind. Fair enough. Oh, well, I'll take that off for now. We can look at the reverse exponential moving average cross as well, which it does actually matter more for trend anyways. And guess what? That'll naturally cross the upside or maintain its composure above the upside cross with any sort of a closure here higher above 9,300-ish region. So 9,300 is pretty much the key for this next move. 9,350 to a lesser extent to a greater extent on the 2-day and 3-day. The 2-day actually showing, exponential will maintain its composure above 9,250-ish region. So all these things work together, of course, and again, it would flip the probabilities back to the downside naturally as well. It's just have to be patient here until we get that clarity later tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So keep an eye on that. That's going to be likely the next big pivot, and likely does sprint off the next big direction if I had to guess. But that's my opinion rather than real hard data, I suppose. At the end of the day, I need to see those levels and criteria met before I get rather excited, or at least before I feel justified as a trader to get excited. But opinion wise, yeah, it would look about right. Anyways, I've been talking for 36 minutes and a half, so ain't nobody listening at this point anyways. There's a few, and you are the few, the proud, the Marines, the Link Marines. Let's go look at Link. Let's go look at Link, baby. I think Link coming down to, ooh, nice one. Okay, so I did say that Link was likely to bounce at around 79,000. We got a bounce. Not that impressive a bounce though. So where does it come into right here? Well, here's the thing. While I do think that this one will come down lower a little bit overall, I do think that it is going to try another bounce from here off the 21, somewhere around 74,000 Satoshis. Does it create a range between about 74,000 and wherever the 10 simple is? Probably yes. And then we'll get resolution coming into next week, depending upon how the weekly sets. So I don't feel comfortable calling the weekly just yet. I do think, however, it is going to attempt another bounce here, and then very likely just ranges, and then we'll have to wait for the weekly to set or Bitcoin to choose a direction. The question is, will alt rally versus Bitcoin if Bitcoin rallies versus the dollar here? Now, alt will very likely rally versus the dollar, of which let's go check on some Link versus dollar. and judge that one. Let's do, I guess, this chart. It looks about the same, actually. Yeah, I'll be looking for a bounce here still. I'd be looking for a bounce here still, and realistically, I don't think that it's appropriate to say anything more than that. Probably back up towards the top side of the short-term range at about upper $7 region, with resolution to come alongside whatever Bitcoin and Mr. Buterin chooses, which actually Mr. Buterin is looking like the more obvious chart right now. Let's go check out Cardano. Cardano, same sort of thing, trying to put in a bounce here as well. It does have a little bit of a head and shoulders on the daily present, and I would overall be looking for this one to take a stab back down to 1150 to 1100-ish region. Weekly is looking like potential next major lower high in place. I'd respect this until not. I'd expect to see some massive hidden bearish divergence. And oh my God, man, this is like the hidden bearish divergence from hell. Is it present on a monthly? Or maybe a bi-weekly, because the monthly is going to be too much. It is, yeah, but it's not confirmed on even a bi-weekly just yet. On a weekly, it kind of is. With any sort of a closure, especially below last week's low at 1295, and yes, I'd very, very, very likely be looking for it to head back down to 1,000 satoshis. Almost at $1,000 there. What else do we have? Do we want to look at the other shitcoins? Not really. What about XRP? They're going to do whatever fucking Bitcoin does. I mean, for the love of fucking God, man. Why am I looking at this garbage? This is ridiculous. What about Litecoin? Another uninteresting chart. They're going to do whatever Bitcoin does. It's not really relevant or helpful to be looking at these. Do we want to look at some more Forex maybe? Nah, I think we covered all the Forex that we really want to talk about today. I think this video is probably already long enough maybe. And let's go look at expected moves. Okay, already. Okay, so for Bitcoin, the way that I'd be judging the lower term timeframes using a 4 hour to kind of mark this one off would be the 9,300-ish level right here. Any sort of a 2 hour or 4 hour delta closure below 9,300-ish region would be indicative that we're going to see some downside tested. Oh, by the way, for the people in the Jewel, I saw some people calling this one out yesterday. Fair enough. Not a signal that I'd take, but it did seem to play out quite well. So yeah, I actually got this move right before 9,200, about $200 higher. Not the most impressive move of all time, and not the most impressive read on this of all time either. Not a move that I'd typically play off the Jewel. Anyways, if we do head back down below 9,300 and close the 2 hour or 4 hour delta below there, I would be looking for hidden bearish divergence play out and come back down to test the low side of the range somewhere between 89.50 and 90.50-ish region. We'll actually make a nice little liquid zone down there. How about that? Something like this. And let's actually do maybe a little bit more like that. Yeah, there we go. That looks about right. So yeah, well, it does look a little bit more nasty. But let's go see what the probabilities are looking like. And for the upside, I think it's a lot more interesting right here for the upside. Even just ticking above, like I said, 7th of July's high. That's good enough for me. That's very likely good enough for me. So we can use that as an upside resolution point, and I'll do 94.75, just get it right there on the dot. And for the downside, what price point do you want to use? I mean, is it relevant to use 9,300 for a daily closure? I suppose, yeah. We could. It's obviously going to have a much higher probability, but here's the thing that I really want to focus on. Look at the rings right now. The slope is very obviously pointed to the north side, and what do you know? Bally and Pig's mom's also a very much aggressive liftoff right there as well. Now I have kind of this one is rather random within this region thus far. So it's is that going to do it in and of itself? I don't know. I don't trust it enough on its own just yet. But if Bitcoin is going to have a chance to break the upside, it would appear that it would very likely be today. Above target probability is just under 41%. Below target probability, which does not have the same implications as the above target probability. It's only a short-term move versus the above target probability is a medium-term move, plus very likely translates into a long-term move based upon what we saw in Entropy's relationship to historical volatility percentile. It technically is a little bit more to the downside, but again, that's just not the same implications. If we were to use something that's a little bit more a little bit more relative, we could use 9,000. And what do you know? This is very interesting now. And remember that we've been looking at this probability with particular attention from like end of last week to where we are right now. And the downside probability was much higher for a little bit of time, as far as breaking the $9,000 region, which would very likely initiate those moves down to 8,500, 8,000, or 8,000, and then 7,500-ish region, respectively. But Bitcoin, with all the chances that it was given, did not make the move. So naturally, probabilities go into the favor of the upside. And as you can see right here, it's actually massively eclipsed the downside probability now. So now would be as good of a time as ever if the Bullahs want to take charge and take the reins for a little bit of time. I'm curious what the 12 hours printing as well. 38.6% versus just over 9% to the downside. So again, massively shifting in favor of the upside. Massively shifting in favor, but at the end of the day, same shit. Still need to see that area taken out. I think what's also interesting about this as well, that we did yesterday, is 4-hour golden cross will naturally occur. Especially as long as above all major moving averages here, but that's been more or less a meme for the last. For the last move. I mean, got a death cross right here. Didn't really get all that much from it. A short-term move about $200 was pretty much, $300 is all that you got. Other than that, more or less just choppy behavior. Actually, no fakes before that, so fair enough. But I'd feel just as confident saying that anywhere below, especially 92.50, the downside's at least 9,000 gonna get tested after that, and then we got another lower high on the daily. So at the end of the day, I'd be paying special attention to traditional markets, because I do still think that the direction chosen in traditional markets is very likely to translate well into Bitcoin as far as the macro goes. But the macro for traditional markets is still the same triggers. I'd keep a particular eye on NASDAQ. Below 10,500 on a daily total closure is going to be the first major warning signal, even though I do think that short term and medium term we are going to come down here. It's just, does that area actually break? That's a critical component that I'm looking for. If that happens, I'd look for all markets to essentially follow suit, on higher term timeframes, with a variation on the lower term timeframes, of course. Other than that, is this a good place to cut it off? I think it is. Short-term range, I'd say 9,300, 9,250 if you want to be super conservative there. And medium term, I'd be looking for still 7th of July high, or I guess it's actually 8th of July high. Why is it printed different day on the daily and 4-hour? Yes, daily shows very clearly 7th of July. 4-hour very clearly shows 8th of July. Maybe it's just my weird time zone being in the Eastern European time zone, but still looking at that as a nice pivot. Until that's met, I'm just sitting here with my hand in my sandpaper. And by the way, if Bitcoin does fail to get continuation in the next couple of days, we will get hidden bearish divergence on the daily as well. And again, it's a ticking time bomb. So that's why I do think that today, these next 2 days, being Wednesday and Thursday, are absolutely critical for price action and will very much carry on onwards the bias. Have I bored you enough yet? Anyways, I'm going to be signing off now. I want to wish you well once again. Take care, and until next time.